Okay, let's just jump right in. We're talking about a crisis that's been simmering for years, but it has just absolutely exploded onto the world stage. So today, we're going to break down the Venezuela flashpoint. What exactly happened, how in the world we got here, and, what it means for all of us.
Right, so here's the date you need to remember, January 3rd, 2026. This is the day everything changed. The day Venezuela's long, painful tragedy turned into a really dangerous international showdown.
And this is the bombshell that dropped. A completely stunning claim from the President of the United States, just broadcast out to the entire world. It suggested, a sudden, dramatic regime change carried out by force. Just, wow.
So what do we actually know about what happened on that day? Let's try to cut through the noise and break down the immediate facts as they started rolling in. Okay, so here's the sequence of events. First, we get reports that the U.S. military has launched major strikes. Then, people in the capital, Caracas, start hearing explosions. Almost immediately, the Venezuelan government comes out and calls it an act of aggression. And then, and this is crucial, they demand proof of life, proof that their president is even still alive. I mean, the situation was chaotic and incredibly tense right from the get-go.
And that really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? This whole thing didn't just happen in a vacuum. To really get what happened on January 3rd, you have to look back at the decade of decay that came before it. How does a country that's literally sitting on some of the biggest oil reserves in the world fall this far? So let's unpack that. Let's walk down the long, painful road that led Venezuela to this point. It really is a story of total economic collapse, unbelievable human suffering, and just constantly rising political tension. Before we get any deeper, we have to talk about this one key term, hyperinflation. And look, this isn't just your normal, oh, prices are going up a little. No. Imagine your entire life savings, the cash in your wallet, becoming pretty much worthless overnight. That is the devastating reality that people in Venezuela have been living with for years. Now, what this shows you is a complete systemic collapse. See, Venezuela's entire fortune was tied to oil. So when you combine serious mismanagement, we're talking things like seizing private companies and farms, putting in price controls that made it impossible to do business. When you combine that with a global drop in oil prices, the country's whole economic engine just seized up. And this wasn't just a line on a chart. It meant empty grocery stores, homes without power, and millions of people suddenly thrown into poverty. And this just perfectly illustrates the human cost. Over 7 million people. I mean, think about that. That's bigger than the population of a lot of countries. And they didn't just leave, they fled. They created one of the biggest and most underfunded refugee crises on the entire planet. For so many, this wasn't a choice. It was about pure survival. So this timeline really puts it all together. You can see how it's just this chain reaction. It starts with the economy starting to wobble. Then the oil price crash just throws gasoline on the fire. As things get worse at home, the political repression gets worse, and the tension with the U.S. just keeps ratcheting up. Those sanctions, for instance, were often aimed at cutting off money to the government and its officials, which, of course, squeezed the economy even harder. You can see how each step leads almost inevitably to the explosion on January 3rd.
And here's the thing. This isn't just Venezuela's crisis anymore. Not by a long shot. The events of January 3rd sent shockwaves across the entire globe, and it's basically forcing every nation to pick a side.
And the reaction from the world was, well, immediate and deeply divided. What's really interesting is that Venezuela's own neighbors, we're talking Brazil, Mexico, Colombia, they immediately condemned the attack. Now, this wasn't necessarily them defending the Maduro government, but it was a hard no to foreign military intervention in their backyard. It's rooted in a long, complicated history. They're worried it sets a dangerous precedent. Everywhere else, it was a mixed bag. A little quiet support for the U.S. here and there, but mostly an overwhelming call from the rest of the world to just de-escalate. But let's bring it back to the people on the ground. For them, this isn't about geopolitics. It's about terrifying uncertainty. There's the immediate fear of a full-blown war breaking out. Then there's the huge risk of a power vacuum. I mean, if Maduro is gone, who's actually in charge? And can they stop the country from just fracturing into pieces? All of this threatens to take an already catastrophic humanitarian crisis and send it into a complete and total freefall.
Okay, so let's zoom out again. The risks here are absolutely global.
This conflict could easily escalate, right? It could pull in other countries in the region, even other world powers. And remember all that oil we talked about? Even with production way down, the chance of a major disruption from a wider conflict is enough to send shivers through global energy markets. And finally, if things get worse, that 7 million refugee number, which is already staggering, could go even higher, putting just an immense, unsustainable strain on the entire region.
So that's really the bottom line here. What we're seeing is the moment a devastating internal crisis basically broke containment. It spilled over its borders and has now become a high-stakes, dangerous confrontation between world powers. And that, of course, leads us to the final, really unsettling question. With a nation in total turmoil, its leadership a giant question mark, and the entire world holding its breath, nobody has a clear answer to the most important question of all. What happens next?